Yes. Oh, yeah.
Back to about 2007, and that was when I was working with a group called Groundwork, which is a white racial justice collective here in Madison, or in Madison. And we were asked to do a training with the board and the staff of Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice because they wanted to focus more on racial justice. And so I was newer to Groundwork at that time also, but I was part of the training team and got to know some of the people and got to know about the network a little bit more. And I had heard little bits and pieces of the network prior to that, but that was when I really got to know people. Judy Miner we were just talking about this. She was one of my first. We did pair discussions and talked about our journey, and she was one of the first people I got to talk to about my journey with racial justice and her journey with racial justice. So I was really inspired by a predominantly white organization that was also multiracial, that was really trying to focus on racial justice and really trying to shift the way that they were doing their work, and really centralize that mission of racial justice. And so, we did some trainings, and then also they did some planning and strategic planning and figured out how to focus on, at that time they were largely focused on the war and doing anti-war work or pro-peace work, but they also started to look at the war at home and how racial and economic injustices were happening here at home and how they were tied to the war abroad. And started focusing on things like anti-prison work and immigrant rights work, and even seeing in native sovereignty and the logo and mascot issue that Barb Munson, who is also part of the board now, has worked, of course, tirelessly on for years. Yeah, and the co-chairs. So just really bringing all those things together, and I think, we've kind of continued that on with our current work with the racial justice tipping point, where we're really even more explicitly focusing on that and talking about how issues like education or climate change or mining also are racial justice issues. So how these things combine.
Could you reflect back on that night 5 years ago, or maybe your own knowledge of why what we do here in Wisconsin has that wider impact on the world?
Well, I wish that every state had a similar network, because I think we'd have a very different country. Because I think if we don't think of peace and justice as intricately connected and see them as part of do the local work and the global work at the same time, we don't make the connections we need to make. And I think it's very few groups that actually are able to pull that off, that really understand that issues about police brutality and racism and issues of environmental destruction, these are part of a social justice community's work. And that if there are groups that can carry that forward on the local level, like in Madison, and what they're able to achieve then gets spread out to other places in the state, that this helps to push the state in a more progressive direction. And I know there have been so many huge struggles in Wisconsin, but were it not for this network, it would have been lost a long time ago.
The situation in Wisconsin.
It's like Cairo has moved to Madison these days.
Try to take away the rights of workers throughout the state, they react.
Union workers in Wisconsin take to the streets protesting the new Republican governor's plan to cut state workers' bargaining rights.
Shrink the employees' collective bargaining rights.
Collective bargaining rights.
People,
the pictures coming out of Wisconsin are amazing.
Largest pro-democracy movements in this state really since the 60s.
This is a tremendous, inspiring reaction. We are ready to take the fight against those who want to destroy the rights of working people in our state.
In ancient eyes are watching in the night. The stars come out to guide the way. The sun still shines despite the clouds, and the dawn is dusk, is dawn, is dusk, is day. Farmers rise and dream to feed the world. The world awakes to feed the heart. Hearts beat while 1,000 flags are waving, and the farmer sees a dream has played a part. We will have peace. We will because we must. We must because we cherish life. And believe it or not, as daring as it may seem, it is not an empty dream to walk in a powerful path. Neither the first nor the last great peace march. Life is a great and mighty march, forever for love and for life on the great peace march.
We were not expecting that many people. To start off with, we were not expecting that many people. And then to see all these people filing in, and we were like, oh my God, I think we've got something here. And then to stand up there and look at this mass, you just go, we've got a movement. We've got a movement. It's happening. People want this to happen. And this is from the far reaches of Wisconsin. And I'm going, yeah, we've got something here. That's exciting. That's really exciting.
The first article of the first newsletter of the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice told the story this way. The Network for Peace Conference was held on Saturday, February 23rd at the state capitol in Madison. The conference was attended by over 350 people from more than 60 different communities throughout the state. It was a day ultimately marked by irony. While the attendees met in workshops to develop the strategies necessary to make an effective appeal to what Lincoln called the better angels of our nature, Bush's military strategists were busy arranging the necessary tools and personnel to unleash the war on the ground in Iraq and Kuwait. Ultimately, at the precise moment that the newly created Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice adjourned from an inspiring exercise in democracy held in the Wisconsin State Assembly chambers, our troops were being ordered into an offensive ground battle of historic proportion. But the work of peace, the appeal to sanity and reason in the conduct of this country's affairs, lays before us still. Saturday, February 23rd, 1991, saw the escalation of two initiatives, one for war, the other for peace. It will take the effort of every one of the citizens of conscience who met that day at the Capitol to assure the more elusive victory for peace. Insofar as the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice can serve as an instrument, fostering cooperation among these people, our work for peace continues.
Can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill. Singly none, singly none.
You do work on a national and global scale, but you've seen what a statewide coalition like Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice can do.
Well, I'll use a contemporary example of the Occupy Wall Street movement, which in my mind is the common, ordinary person saying, why don't I have a say? Why doesn't my opinion count? Why doesn't my opinion influence policy? And why is it that if a majority, for instance, wants universal health care, why don't we have it? And so we're up against these forces in so many different ways, whether it's the Nestle bottling plant, for water bottling plant in Wisconsin, whether it's a new coal-fired power plant in Wisconsin, all these questions. Somebody's making these decisions. And to me, something like the network and the many, many different groups and individuals it reflects is such an important tool to have at hand, because by being linked with each other and by being in touch with each other, knowing what we're doing, it makes all of us so much stronger.
There's so many wonderful events that I can think of. I am so inspired by what our member groups do and put on here in Madison and around the state, and I try to go and be part of as many as I can. Lanterns for Peace, of course, is in August every year as we commemorate the bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and we go over here to Tenney Park, and it's such a beautiful event on that hot summer evening. Maybe with a storm brewing over Lake Mendota or not, and then we make the lanterns and have this wonderful program. So that's really a wonderful event. Another one that I always love is the Pancakes for Peace event that we do up in central Wisconsin every June at the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. We do that with a group of ours, People for Peace, WAPACA People for Peace, and we treat like 200 people to pancakes.
I'm Diane Farsetta. I was just always drawn to activism and to social justice causes, and I got my first exposure to very well-organized and networked activism was through the East Timor Action Network. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, this was in the early 90s, and East Timor was a really just such a compelling cause to me. I was learning about these things and just having my mind being blown by, all these things, all these assumptions that I had, all these things that I would never learn about any other way. When I came to Madison, this was one of the most active chapters of the East Timor Action Network, so I got very involved. The Madison chapter of East Timor Action Network became a member group of WNPJ. I was thinking about all the other groups that I am or have been involved with, like the Code Pink Women for Peace was a WNPJ member group, and we're like 60 or 70 women or girls, around the table, and we just, all that we did for like 3 hours was go around the table and talk about, who we were and why we were there and why this was important to us. And that was amazing. It was great.
Yeah, my name's Steve Burns, and shortly after I started there, we began a project to put referendums on the ballot in local elections all over the state on the question of whether the United States should leave Iraq. And this was for the April 2006 election, and that I think was the first time I really saw how effective the network was in terms of taking a good idea and then bringing that out around the state and giving people a chance to apply that idea in their own context. And we were getting calls from the New York Times, Japanese newspaper flew someone in to report on this, Australian newspaper, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and nobody was interested in the fact that Madison had voted against the war. It was all that these small towns that they really had never heard of before, but they had the impression that this was sort of the middle of America, this was rural America turning against the war. And that's what made it really significant.
Really drew me in to the network is that it's run by the grassroots. It's run by the people. And to be a part of a network that encourages people, working to encourage citizens to work from the ground up for a more peaceful and just and sustainable world is an excellent thing. I realized that I could stand up and I could speak my voice and I could make a difference, which helps me educate others on how they can develop those same skills and how they to build a truly grassroots organization run by the people for a peaceful and just and sustainable future.
I became involved through Bonnie Block in a officer kind of way, facilitating the membership assembly, our fall assembly we call it, and I came to the recognition of justice and peace permeating my life through my faith. And from there, my late husband and I agreed to care for a friend of ours, Helen Derry Woodson, agreed to care for her children when she went off to disarm a missile silo in Missouri.
I've been a board member for Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice for the last few years, and first got involved with WNPJ because of my interest in diversity issues in general, and trying to find ways to deal with diversity across cultural divides, both in central Wisconsin and throughout the state. I got interested first and foremost in the anti-racism training that I saw that Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice was providing for its own board members, and I valued what they were doing, because I think that's a very, very important way for people to deeply understand issues that impact people of color, and for an organization to make that level of commitment is kind of unique. So I was impressed with the work that Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice did from the very first I worked with them.
I've been a member for about 5 years, and I've gained a lot from the experience. And I've met a lot of good people, a lot of people involved in the same type of issues I'm involved in.
Why is it important for the coalition not to be just the usual suspects, perhaps, from Milwaukee and Madison, but to be truly statewide?
The M&M syndrome, as they're known around the state, I
That's
discovered, Madison, Milwaukee. Oh yes, we do need to move beyond that one. When I found out that there were small groups of people standing on the intersection of, say, County Y and County B up in some little, outside of some little burg way up in northern Wisconsin every Saturday, all year round in the middle of winter blizzards, I was pretty amazed. I was raised in small town Wisconsin. I was from East Troy. When I was growing up, it takes a lot more courage for people to stand out on the street corners in a small town and speak out for what they believe in and hold that peace sign than it does for someone in Milwaukee or Madison. I just have so much respect for these people. And I always tell them that whenever I have the chance.
I think that courage that it takes for someone to do these actions where everybody knows who you are is something that we all ought to take on. I mean, I talk a lot about being an opinion leader. I think it is really important to speak out and not let yourself be silenced, because once people hear something being said publicly, it makes it okay for them to say it. And that really is something we need in every place. And I think sometimes our families and our little small communities we're part of really are the places it might be hardest but the most important to speak up and to say why it is we're doing what we're doing and how important it is that we bring about the changes.
I think about when we did a peace walk, which had been a tradition over many years, and for 3 days between the commemoration of the day that the U.S. bombed Hiroshima and the day that the U.S. bombed Nagasaki, we walked from Camp Williams to Fort McCoy. What an incredible experience. Many service personnel, service women and men going by in cars gave us thumbs up and peace signs, and every time that we can manifest the anti-war sentiment and the pro-justice sentiment and the anti-global warming and the many issues that we work on then that intersect, we make it more possible for other people to do the same.
It was all the same thing. Everybody was talking about whether it was nuclear weapons or health issues or gun issues or violence issues or just corporate issues. It was all really the same thing. So when I came to that room in February of 1991 and saw those 350 people from all those groups, I was just so inspired and wanted to be as much of a part of it as I can. I think now we've got over 180 organizations, and so the network was continuously growing.
So, but I think showing that people have common issues and common beliefs is really important, because I mean the other side, the status quo wants us to be divided in our little boxes, not talking to each other. That's sort of the divide and rule tactics. That's how they maintain their power. And how do we build grassroots energy? And it's through that creative synergy. And next thing we have farmers speaking at labor rallies and labor activists like David Newby coming to speak at farmer rallies. So, and that's the type of thing the network facilitates.
What got you involved originally? Were you thinking back to those early days?
Yeah, I had been wondering for quite a while since I had come out of Vietnam in 1970, and I had never been a part of any kind of organization when I first came out of Vietnam. I just wanted to be left alone, me and my family. I didn't care about anything. But in 1991, I think it was, I first met Nan Cheney, and at that Nan was out recruiting people to, become a part of the organization. And after the U.S. went into Kuwait, I started having more bouts of PTSD. So I made the meeting and a few more meetings at the Capitol with WNPJ. Then I just dropped out. So I stayed out until September 11, 2001. September 11th is my birthday. I knew that the United States was going to attack somebody. And Tammy Baldwin was having a town hall meeting in DeForest. And I went there with questions originally to ask her about the School of Americas, because I was familiar with that school. I was stationed in Panama. I taught jungle warfare right down from the School of Americas. And when I got to the meeting, I forgot what I was going to ask her. And I started talking about Afghanistan. And at that time, I met Bob Feith and Mike White was there, and Mary Sanderson, one of the agent grannies. All three came over to me and told me they appreciated what I said. And the first question I asked was, are you just against this war? If it was just something to try to stop this war, I wouldn't have become a part of it. When I started speaking out about it, my psychiatrist said it was therapeutic for me, because I was releasing hate that I had carried for years. I feel that young people are the ones that will really bring the change that has to come in this country.
And believe it or not, as daring as it may seem, it is not an empty dream to walk in a powerful path. Neither the first nor the last. Great, be smart. Life is a great and mighty march, forever for love and for life on the great peace march. And as daring as it may seem, it is not an empty dream to walk in a powerful path. Neither the first nor the last. Great peace march. Life is a great and mighty march, forever for love and for life on the great peace march. Forever for love and for life on the great peace march.